All right, good morning, everybody. Today is Friday, May 22nd. Doing the severe weather discussion this morning. If we look at current visible satellite, the upper low finally starting to break down and move off to the east. Sun shining here in Champaign, Illinois, where I am for the first time in several days, probably I think since Saturday maybe. If we look out to the plains, extensive mesoscale convective system, or MCS, developed last night from some beautiful storms. Hypothetically targeted that area of southwest Kansas. They were real beauties, and that grew upscale overnight. And we see now the remains of this MCS and the mesoscale convective vortex that spawned over northern Kansas. Outflow boundary from this now moving all the way down into northern Texas. It looks like the western end of this finally starting to slow down a little bit. But I think that's really going to be the target area today, as we'll see. And then as we go into the day tomorrow, we actually have a couple targets, one in the high plains and one closer to home here in Illinois. Looking at the long wave IR, we can see the cloud tops with this. Still active convection ongoing across the Ozarks. So I mentioned, I think yesterday and then also back on Wednesday, potential target area here with the outflow boundary. I said I think that'll be farther south. It's certainly going to be quite a bit farther south than the NAM was implying there back on Wednesday. And taking a look at the mid-level water vapor, again, you can see the westerly flow in place down here. We can even make out a little bit of that, the gravity wave associated with that MCS or the outflow boundary down across northern Texas. And really a lot of meridional flow up here farther to the north. And then the next upper trough coming into the west coast for Saturday. And taking a look at the current radar composite, you can see that squall line still going across the Ozarks. The MCV very evident up there near Bennington in northern Kansas, one of my favorite towns in the whole country. But it looks like at least the active convection down near the Red River for now has dissipated. If we move on, take a look at our upper air analysis today. You can see at 250 millibars, again, the southerly flow from Kansas on north, and then the more zonal flow down here across the latitude of Oklahoma and Texas, extending back to the Southern California coast. 500 millibars, again, pretty weak flow, only 20 knots at Dallas this morning, but we do see more stout flow back to the west. Looks like 35 knots, if I can count, at Amarillo and Midland. So it's the hope that this stronger mid-level flow overspreads that outflow boundary, giving us, again, marginal shear for organized storms today. And you can also make out that MCV circulation there. You see the northeast winds at 500 millibars at North Platte, Nebraska. 700 millibars. Again, cool temperatures here in the vicinity of that MCV. Warmer down here to the south, plus 10 at Dallas. But again, the cap, I think, should be breached today, courtesy of the set along that boundary, as we'll see when we look at some of the numerical guidance. And then finally, moving down to 850 millibars, again, fairly modest southerly flow, 20 knots at Dallas. And a lot of richer mid-level moisture in here off to the northeast across a lot of the Midwest. Now looking at a couple soundings, starting in Dallas, again, very stout capping inversion, convective temperature here, 102, pretty shallow low-level moisture as well. But again, notice these steep lapse rates here, but we're going to need some kind of ascent along the boundary to locally remove this cap and allow parcels to reach their level of free convection and form thunderstorms. Norman was back in the outflow. Actually, is this morning or last night? This is last night, actually. Norman sounding this morning looks like that failed, or they didn't launch because of the thunderstorms around. And then take a peek up at Topeka, moist adiabatic profile here. And we looked at this area yesterday. Going to be low Cape, maybe some stronger low-level shear up there, courtesy of the low. But that would be more of a high-risk, high-reward type of target. Looking at the surface analysis, let's see, we can see the outflow boundary now across western Missouri, pretty evident east of the Springfield area, and then arcing back down through western Arkansas, and then settling down here near and south of the Red River, separating the easterly flow up here to the north from the southerly flow south of that boundary, and then that boundary actually extending all the way back into the Texas Panhandle this morning. 80 over 69 there. Is that Denton, Texas, perhaps? Don't really know exactly where that is. But again, the easterly winds north of that boundary may locally enhance some of the low-level shear up there. So again, I think that's probably going to be the play today. So if we jump in to the numerical models and we'll look at the NAM here, we'll actually do this just over the whole country, since we have a couple targets pretty widely spaced tomorrow. Certainly want to pay attention to what's going on locally here in Illinois. And one thing you'll notice with the NAM, it has that outflow boundary way too far to the north today, north of the Red River into southern Oklahoma. That is not going to happen. And that's one thing, and I've mentioned this before, and I'll mention it again, that the models often, when they initialize with ongoing convection, they initialize it too weak. And the outflow boundaries typically move faster than is progged certainly by your synoptic models like the NAM and the GFS and European. And also even some of the high resolution models, some of the older HER runs from earlier this morning that I looked at, again, was not really doing a very good job initializing that MCS, that convection across Oklahoma. So we want to take this with a grain of salt, knowing that that boundary probably too far north there. So in our minds, we're going to have to shift that a little farther to the south as we go through and look at this. But we do have this idea of the backed winds on the north side of the boundary. Dry line is going to mix east into northwest Texas today. So setting up a bit of a triple point in here, and there we see that convectively augmented area of low pressure near, I like to call it beet rice. It's actually pronounced Beatrice, but if you want to make someone from Nebraska mad, you call it beet rice here in southeast Nebraska. And like yesterday, I'm just really concerned about the degree of instability that's going to develop up there. And then as we advance through in time, another MCS is going to develop tonight out of the convection that forms near and south of the Red River. That will blast southeast across Texas. Again, how far that progresses, still a bit unsure at the moment. The low that was in northern Kansas today will move east into Iowa and weaken during the day tomorrow. But still the upper level reflection of this will provide, I think, enough shear, and the instability will come back. I think for organized storms, we see this pseudo warm front set up over north central Illinois tomorrow. And then farther to the west, let me click on this here so we can advance this. New lee low forming in response to that trough over the Pacific Northwest this morning. So that will set up return flow here in the NAM. It can be overly aggressive with low clouds, and you see that this area of cooling in here, it's really keeping a lot of this socked in with low clouds, with low overcast. If that were to happen, obviously that would dramatically limit or eliminate any instability in the high plains target tomorrow. And then we see here by 0Z, again, pseudo warm front, the remains of that surface low near the Quad Cities. Lee low here over Colorado. There will be a dry line as well extending south from that across western Kansas and western Texas. Now as we move into Sunday, again, the trend with this whole system has been slower. So we may be able to squeak out one more halfway decent chase day on the plains here on Sunday. But if we do look at our surface analysis here, very obvious cold front oriented from a lee low over eastern New Mexico, extending northeast across Kansas into Nebraska. And there's been a pretty robust MCS signal as well developing across parts of Minnesota and Iowa Sunday afternoon. Also, this here is associated with another MCS, at least in the NAM model, across South Texas, where upper flow should be more limited, I would think. And then as we move into the day on Monday, again, really start scraping the bottom of the barrel here in terms of chasing prospects, but just looking at the surface map, I would think the only viable targets on Monday would be parts of maybe southern Texas Panhandle, South Plains, into southeast New Mexico here in this corridor of back surface flow, east of this lee low over far west Texas. So 850 millibars today. You see the flow down here increasing a bit by 0Z. Again, this is too far to the north, with the boundary being too far to the north up there. A little better low level flow up there near the low in Nebraska. And then moving into tomorrow, kind of the most interesting of these days, with a couple targets, the High Plains target. Again, the mid-level flow here has come down from where it was progged back 2 days ago, when the NAM had the Central Kansas Wedge Fest. That now is clearly not going to happen, as well as about 25 knots of flow as well, overspreading Illinois there on Sunday or on Saturday. Low-level jet ramping up Saturday night into Sunday morning. And then actually, if we look at the day on Sunday, again, you can see better low-level flow coming in here, intersecting this boundary across the Texas Panhandle. But one thing to notice is we also have these 20 to 25 knot northerly winds on the cold side of that boundary. So that might make that front begin to surge south Sunday afternoon. And surging cold fronts are pretty close to my least favorite chasing targets, except for, of course, Iowa. Whereas if we go here farther to the north, the flow on the cold side of the front is more parallel to that front. So that would mean maybe that boundary wouldn't be surging south as much. So that might argue for something on Sunday farther north into central Kansas, maybe even into Nebraska. Robust MCS signal, surprise, surprise, across Iowa. And then moving into the day on Monday, again, just looking at the surface pattern, kind of eyeballed this area down in here, and you see, again, kind of that problem with this at least surging nature of that front across eastern New Mexico and the Texas Panhandle. Obviously, we'll have to evaluate the mid-level flow in here, and then some signal as well of another MCS developing farther to the east across parts of Oklahoma in northeastern Texas. So heading up to 500 millibars, you see that enhanced mid-level flow on the south side of that vortex over southern Nebraska. And again, with the MCS kind of overturning a lot of this area, again, the target area now is shoved farther south of the belt of stronger mid-level flow. So that means, again, the boundary is going to be where the storms are going to form today. And unfortunately, for chasing prospects anyway, that's kind of outrun some of the stronger mid-level flow here. But if you're able to back the winds around to an easterly component on the north side of the boundary, there you may be okay. Obviously, stronger flow with the northern Rockies trough, but a lot of the moisture has really been taken out of that area from a prior frontal passage, and then the widespread convection that occurred over Kansas last night. So as we move into day on Saturday, not one, but two mesoscale convective vortices, one here tracking across northern Illinois into southern Wisconsin, and another one actually emanating from probably the MCS that forms tonight, moving into southeast Missouri tomorrow. So probably a couple little MCVs moving across Illinois, and then the synoptic trough begins to kick on out and de-amplify here. But again, you see that the flow here is certainly not consistently strong, again, about 30, 35 knots out of the southwest, and then becoming increasingly meridional as we head north into Wyoming and the Dakotas Saturday afternoon. And then advancing this farther into Sunday, you can see now that trough, again, is slowed down a bit. Again, some mesoscale features down here associated likely with convection. These are not synoptic scale environmental wind maxima down across Texas, but you do see, again, the stronger mid-level flow here farther onto the north, and down here to the south, again, with the weak height gradient across Texas Panhandle, a mid-level flow only on the order probably of 20 knots or so. So that's not really all that good down there. Excuse me. And then as we move into Monday, you can see, again, this is the beginning of that cutoff low that's been progged to be across southern plains for a lot of next week. I'm going to kind of shut things down. But again, slightly stronger mid-level flow out of the west on the order of 25 knots on the southern periphery of this. Also likely convectively generated jet max here, but again, from the south across the highly forested areas of eastern Oklahoma there. on Monday afternoon. Again, 250 millibars. So anvil level flow, again, you see, again, with that boundary setup across northern Texas now, again, anvil level flow also going to be weaker down there. So again, it's not just a question, oh, well, let's find where the best winds are and go there. Well, the problem is you're sitting in convectively overturned air with little to no instability. And again, with this cold core target up here, you can see, again, your mid-level, your upper level flow, just kind of all shades of disaster, either light southerlies or here, have 40 knot southeasterlies. Yum. All right. And then advancing into Saturday, again, we see that jetlet emerging on the south side of that de-amplifying trough across the northern half of Illinois. Anvil level flow decreasing with southern extent down toward the weaker MCV across Missouri. And then actually decent anvil level flow in the order of 60 knots across the eastern Colorado high plains target Saturday afternoon. And then with the main jet upstream of this trough, the trough is going to dig and begin to cut off a little synoptic meteorology there. So as we again move into the day on Sunday, again, robust MCS signature here, blowing up a lot of eastern Texas. But again, veer back problems look pretty evident in that southern high plains target there. On Sunday afternoon, all of this flow here across the northern plains, remember, was post-frontal. And then as we move into the day on Monday, again, question is going to be how far back is the moisture going to be able to make it? And you're kind of running out of real estate here, running into the Rio Grande. Again, I don't require passports on my field course. And obviously with current conditions, international borders now are closed, so I'm not going to be hypothetically targeting Mexico there, although they can get decent supercells, if you're unaware, in northern Mexico. And sometimes they can even cross the border into South Texas. Several years ago, a storm actually produced a tornado in Mexico and then crossed over the Rio Grande into Eagle Pass, Texas, and actually produced damage on both sides of the border. The atmosphere, the weather doesn't really care about these boundaries we draw on a map. So going through the day today, again, you can see just kind of a glancing blow from this weak upper wave here passing to the north, sets off storm in the model there. There's the synoptic trough, there's that mesoscale convective vortex, and then there's that pesky upper low that's finally starting to reattach itself to the main flow, and it'll move out into the Atlantic, thank goodness. So as we move into Saturday, you can see the pair of these MCVs here, Iowa, and then down farther to the south across Arkansas. And as we go through here, one thing that is a bit troubling to me in Illinois is the way this is lifting north here. That's actually lending itself to a lot of differential negative vorticity advection or synoptic subsidence on the back side of that across a lot of north central Illinois Saturday afternoon, at least in NAM world. Surface boundary is going to be somewhat nebulous. So again, might be your zone of initiation here closer to the upper low. Trend in this now has been a bit slower as well. It's been highly inconsistent. And we'll talk about that more when we get into high res in a minute. Obviously, synoptic ascent overspreading the central high plains there in the northern Rockies with the synoptic trough Saturday afternoon. And then moving through the day on Sunday, again, a lot of little warts and pimples on this. This is going to be a lot of widespread convection going along that front on Sunday. And the question is going to be trying to find a non-overturned air mass that has decent shear. And you see the height gradient here relatively weak, telling us that our wind fields, again, relatively weak here Sunday afternoon, but at least some hints of large-scale ascent, again, here into the central high plains ahead of that Vort max. And then moving into Monday as well, you see, again, large-scale ascent overspreading this region in here, with flow being generally too weak or else being post-frontal up here across the northern plains. So again, I think if you're a Chase Cationer, you're going to be spending some time in far west Texas as we go round out Memorial Day weekend. Reminds me, 2014, I spent the entire Memorial Day weekend in Hobbs, New Mexico. It was as fun as it sounds. So moving into looking at our dew point, our thermodynamics, again, this is way too weak here with the MCS. It is bringing significant instability up here toward that cold core target, but we'll see if that actually happens. We're going to take a look at some of the hurricane fields here a little bit later on. But again, this here too far to the north. But you see where that outflow boundary kind of intersects that dry line bulge. You can just shift this a couple counties south into Texas. That's going to be my target for today. And then we see there's tonight's MCS blowing up, not as bad as it looked yesterday. So then moving into the day on Saturday, very nebulous surface boundaries in place, again, across Illinois, kind of the pseudo warm front set up along the US 24 corridor, kind of from Peoria running east, areas in between Champaign and Kankakee, that weakening surface low across southeast Iowa, and obviously the plains dry line back in here with the NAM, again, holding on to a lot of low clouds and stability. I think very narrow instability axis again along that dry line. Again, Wyoming, if we're targeting Texas today, Wyoming would just be out of play tomorrow, just too far. Illinois also would be out of play or too far if we're targeting North Texas today. It would be possible, however, from North Texas to reach a target of western Kansas, maybe up into southeast or northeast Colorado along the bent back dry line. And I always do prefer to come in from the east or from the south if I have a long drive, rather than if you're coming in from the north, you're behind something, and if you're late, you start having to either drive around storms or punch through the core. I would obviously drive around storms. I'm just not that extreme. I don't know what's wrong with me. Then as we move into Sunday, you can see again residual low-level moisture back in here across the high plains, and then my goodness, pop goes the weasel. We have either widespread convection or very strong vertical mixing going on across this area of West Texas. So again, Sunday, and then obviously we have the that triple point-like target up here farther to the north across northern Kansas, southern Nebraska there on Sunday, where the mid-level flow was better. And then moving into Monday, again, a lot of pre-existing convection going on here Monday, kind of overturning a lot of this air mass across southern Kansas into a lot of western Texas. But again, kind of that target I outlined earlier on Monday there showing up in the dew point field as well. So 700 millibar temperatures, again, just doing this over the entire country, capping here, again, increasing the farther south we go across Texas. But there are fairly reliable signs that the cap will be breached down there, and actually probably fairly rapid upscale growth into another MCS there this evening. Much weaker capping, obviously, to the north in the vicinity of this low, because, well, what is an upper low? It's a pool of cold air aloft. Okay. So as we head to tomorrow, again, cap here, relatively weak across the Illinois target tomorrow. So again, the nebulous surface features, that's good. That we're going to be seeing weak capping in here. And then at least some hints of some ascent along that bent back dry line here across Colorado. One thing, if you look at the NAM, one thing it does is it does kind of struggle in hot, dry, convective environments. The convective parameterization scheme actually developed for the tropics. And you'd say, well, why would we do that? Well, actually, about half of the entire globe is the tropics. So tropical convection is actually the dominant convective mode that we see on the planet. So in terms of modeling global weather or global climate or something like that, the tropical convection is far more important to get right than the severe convection that occurs in small areas of the United States. So moving into Sunday, again, we see whatever's left of the EML here beginning to be overturned across Central Plains. You see widespread cooling due to ascent along that boundary there. And then moving into Monday, again, not going to be much, doesn't look like much of a cap in place unless you get really, really far here to the south. And again, well, why is that? Again, just no EML, right? We see where's our flow coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. The elevated mixed layer originates here over the southwestern U.S., northern Mexico, the high terrain. If we don't have flow out of that area at mid-levels, you're just not going to see a strong EML in place, and that's what we're looking at as we head into next week. So the instability prog here off the NAM, again, going to be very, very large here. It's possible that boundary does move a little north here, not as far north as modeled, but again, this is too far north. It's underneath too strong flow. So again, in your mind, shift that south of the Red River there. This is trying to develop some instability as well up across eastern Kansas. But again, with the MCS being poorly modeled, this morning, bit skeptical of that solution. Then moving into the day tomorrow, again, uncapped Cape here, probably around 2,000 joules per kilogram. Probably, again, at least if you believe this, it makes sense that maybe near the Quad Cities or your zone of storm formation, or maybe along this pseudo-warm front extending east here across northern Illinois. And you see, again, those capping concerns with the high plains target back to the west there. And you say, well, why is the NAM not making storms? Well, that's why. It's keeping it capped, but of course the NAM isn't the only voice in the choir, so to speak. And then moving into Sunday, you can see again, large cold pool spreading across Texas Sunday afternoon. Really don't like target down here unless maybe you get way south, but again, with outflow boundaries typically being farther north than modeled, you're going to need a passport here real quickly if you're thinking about that area. So again, kind of drawn to this area up here to the north, hopefully that's north of the overturned MCS outflow there. And then moving into the day on Monday, again, you see that area back here to the west across parts of Texas there. So looking at the Cape Shear overlay, which again, I really do like with College of DuPage. Again, shear here only on the order of 30 knots. So again, you might get a transient supercell when things first go up, especially if you're able to develop instability, and I think you will on the cool side of that boundary tomorrow afternoon or this afternoon. And again, even up here to the north, the shear again only on the order of 30 knots. So again, with the moderate mid-level flow in place, I'm going to be kind of hurting in that department. And then moving into tomorrow, again, shear here actually pretty good along the High Plains dry line. Also shear here across northern Illinois, 35, 40 knots or so out of the west. So if you're able to get an isolated storm there, supercell certainly would be possible across Illinois tomorrow. And then shear decreasing as you head south down the Plains dry line Saturday afternoon. Moving into Sunday, again, if you want a problem, I mean, we got all kinds of problems. Sunday, we have shear vectors, upper flow vectors oriented parallel to or across that front from the warm to cold side here. So really looking not great. Looking at this map here with that target up in the Kansas-Nebraska border. Shear actually better and more orthogonal down here across far southwest Texas. But again, you got some road network and terrain issues down there. Obviously issues as well with the international border as you head farther south. And then taking a look Monday, again, the shear, boy, even worse. On the order of 25 knots down here is really all you're going to be able to do. And then anything kind of along these fronts here set up across the central U.S., just very, very weak shear parallel to the boundary. It's not worth your time. It's not worth your gasoline either. So low-level shear, the 0 to 1 kilometer storm relative helicity. Again, today, I think there'll be some kind of a maxima here on the cool side of the boundary. So again, take this, shift this south. This is all in outflow. This likely in precip as well there over eastern Nebraska. Obviously ramping up tonight with the nocturnal low-level jet in place. And then moving into the day tomorrow with that low cloud deck in place across central high plains in the NAM. That's leading to a preservation here of the low-level shear. So I don't want anyone to think, oh, well, 170, 0 to 1 SRH, hey, that's going to be a wedge fest, But again, if you look at this forecast sounding, you see it's completely capped. I'm not sure how you get weak tornado out of a profile that looks like this, but I certainly don't. But again, that particular sounding there, you're just not going to generate convection on that with a sounding that looks like that. And then advancing into Sunday, again, you say, oh, hey, you know, look at this. This looks really good. Well, I got a news for you on this. This is on the immediate cool side of the front. And on the cold side of the front, what happens? We have a frontal inversion. The wind shift from northeast in the cold air up to southwest in the potentially warmer air aloft. So, of course, that generates extreme shear across that inversion. Very long photograph here. It's going to give you a lot of SRH. But again, this is not something that's ever going to support a surface-based storm. So you have to keep that in mind, again, when you look at these shear progs. And then moving our way into Monday, oh boy, except for, you know, this MCS here, yikes. All right, so supercell composite, let's do this. So today, again, really kind of bullseyeing here up into that outflow, but I really don't think this area is going to destabilize like the NAM thinks it will. So again, take that with a grain of salt, and SPC also on board with, again, that no destabilization up here. Sorry, Charlie. Okay. So again, you got to be aware of the current conditions. How did the models handle these things? You need to do a diagnosis here. So moving into tomorrow, again, supercell composite kind of highlighting area here across northern Illinois. We'll launch a sounding here, oh, not too far from Canton in northwest Illinois. I have a friend who lives up there, Colin, hello. This photograph, nice low level sickle shape here, a lot of streamwise vorticity, uncapped sounding. Again, about 2,500 cape here. Decent mid-level flow out of the west at 40 knots. That profile doesn't look bad if we can get a storm in that environment. And the issue in Illinois tomorrow is going to be figuring out exactly where the storms are going to form. And then also here, right along the dry line, let's see if we can find a more uncapped sounding that's not in the clouds across northeast Colorado tomorrow. But again, you see just cap city here in that area. So I think, again, really going to be hard pressed to get anything going there tomorrow, at least if the NAM is right. And moving into Sunday, again, a lot of this is with that extreme shear and some instability on the cold side of that boundary. Sunday afternoon, obviously we have the probably MCS spreading across Texas as well. So again, you can't just go running after bullseyes in these composite parameters. You have to know in a synoptic and mesoscale sense what's going on, what's leading to these bullseyes, where they are. And then looking at Monday, again, this is probably associated with an MCS here, and this is just not looking extremely favorable for chasing as we go into next week. So today, again, tornado parameter, it's bullseyeing the extreme shear in the cold pool, the MCS, also where it's a little saturated. Okay, good, got it. Looking at tomorrow, probably not, if we get storms, probably not a tornado day on the high plains tomorrow. But again, you know, one, so we're not talking about Illinois wedge fest tomorrow, I don't think. But again, fairly low LCL showing up here. This particular profile, not as much low-level shear as the one I found earlier, but certainly does not look bad across Illinois tomorrow. And then moving into Sunday afternoon, again, here's your MCS across Iowa. Doesn't look like really a tornado day unless there's a mesoscale accident somewhere. And then Monday as well, there's this MCS signal showing up over Oklahoma there. So rounding up the NAM here, looking at the simulated preset field. Again, you see how it just really whiffed on this MCS, not having this extend near. That was from 10 in the morning. The radar didn't at all look like that. So you see it's reconvecting back here, but I really don't think that's going to happen. Again, there's kind of the storm of interest. Again, shift this to the south, a couple counties across the Red River. And then there we see the MCS developing tonight. Question is, you probably have some light rain rolling through Illinois, maybe some storms tomorrow morning, but indication that things should clear. And then you kind of have a couple rounds of storms, maybe something going along the warm front mid-afternoon, and then maybe later something closer to the surface low. So again, it's a bit of a nebulous target tomorrow. Also some storms forming in out ahead of that MCV over southeast Missouri tomorrow afternoon. Convection going off the Wyoming mountains. Also down in the vicinity of Fort Stockton in southwest Texas, which I guess might, would that be a valid hypothetical target for me tomorrow if I'm in Texas today? Obviously can't make it up to Wyoming, but again, I think it would be just drive west somewhere. But again, I mean, this isn't awful. I mean, you might get some hail out of that, some structure, I don't know. And then moving into Sunday, you see the MCS signal across Iowa. Also, we see that initiation near the triple point in northern Kansas, more linear convection down the front. And then the big convective cluster across Texas there. And then moving into Monday, again, just you see this big MCS signal. A lot of heavy rain going to be falling across southern plains this week. But again, I think any kind of target would be back into this area Memorial Day Monday afternoon. So now going to take a look at some of the high-res models here. First we'll start with the high-res NAM for the next couple days. So again, you see too far north there, but fairly rapid upscale growth, at least in this model. Not buying this in southeast Kansas. Again, you see it just basically killed that MCS way too fast. Not nearly robust enough with the outflow, I don't think. And then moving into tomorrow afternoon, down here again, a couple storms forming, and this actually does try to initiate up into Colorado, but we'll look farther north in a minute. Not really liking the Fort Stockton idea, at least in this model. And then moving into Sunday, again, just kind of widespread convection, again, kind of blowing up along that front and then farther south along the dry line. Nothing here looking extremely appetizing beyond today. So heading farther north, again, looking at tomorrow, this does pop a cell there into northeastern Colorado. So let me throw up a sounding there before that storm forms. So again, that's worth considering for tomorrow. Just because the course resolution NAM doesn't make a storm, that's not the be-all and end-all of saying, hey, you really shouldn't be doing this. Again, still some capping concerns there. Low-level photographs actually counterclockwise curved. So if you want a problem, we're finding all kinds of problems here with the next couple of days. And then moving into Sunday, again, just looks like a lot of unsheared convection forming there across the central plains on Sunday. So we're not going to keep cutting these videos here to look at mush over the next week. And then Saturday across the Midwest, again, kind of that morning precip signal coming through. I got to keep an eye on this. Obviously, anything stable air coming out of the back of there would obviously kind of wipe out a target in eastern Illinois tomorrow afternoon. But we do see, again, some hints of supercell-like features forming over northwest Illinois, Quad Cities, Galesburg area, back into the state west of Illinois. It's, forgot the name of that. I don't want to say it. It's a four-letter word. I know that. But again, on the south flank of this, I think probably southernmost storm, where you'd want to be in Illinois there tomorrow. And then Sunday, again, just there's your big squall line. So looking at the HER, again, for today, start in the Midwest. Let's zoom out on this. So again, looking at tomorrow off the HER, well, there's, you want an 18Z supercell, Danville? Well, you got an 18Z supercell from the HER. But again, this quite a bit faster, a lot more supercellular here. So again, timing tomorrow, bit of an issue with this, but again, this kind of bringing is saying, oh, well, if you drive to Quincy or drive to Galesburg at 3 o'clock, well, you're going to be in trouble there. So this would suggest a mid-afternoon north of Bloomington special tomorrow afternoon. Looking at the southern target for today, again, pretty rapid upscale growth here. But again, this is doing a little bit better with the position at outflow boundary here, kind of northwest of the Dallas area. And again, that's going to be a mess up there into southern Oklahoma, I would think, unless you're sitting around Norman and you see something go. And then looking at tomorrow, again, looks like weekly shear, hot, high-based convection going along the dry line tomorrow in West Texas off the HER. And then looking at today, Central Plains, again, that cold core target. And if you're local, keep an eye on it there. And then obviously moving into tomorrow, this does convect very nicely in northeast Colorado and southwest Nebraska. So again, that's something to monitor with that. The experimental HER, so again, starting in Illinois, again, this one a bit faster than the NAM here, even a couple rounds of storms. Interesting. So again, tomorrow, I'd be, here in Champaign, obviously probably driving west at some point. But again, exactly where and when, still a bit up in the air at this time. Heading to the south for today, off of this, again, very similar to the other one. Again, probably a bit too far north here with where that storm forms, northwest of the Dallas area, near the outflow boundary, and you hope that can remain discrete at least for a bit. But I think hail is probably the biggest risk today, along with winds. And then moving into tomorrow afternoon, again, just looks like a mess along the West Texas dry line, probably not where you'd want to target tomorrow afternoon. And then looking across Colorado in vicinity, again, this is a bit more subdued up there. It does try to fire off a storm, but doesn't look very good. So again, that is that one. And then just quickly looking at some of the other HREF members here, beginning again with the Midwest, and then we'll eventually shift to other parts of the country. So again, looking at this tomorrow afternoon, again, morning storms here just going on by, and then just something kind of redevelop on the southern flank of that. So again, this one kind of closer to the experimental HER, not as fast as the operational HER, not as slow as the NAM. So again, that's a bit interesting there. Looking at the NNMB as we load this one. Again, this one here a little bit faster than the NAM, I guess, but again, a bit farther north as well, up here north of the Peoria area by 0Z. Again, sunset here now after 8 o'clock, which is wonderful. But again, there's that solution. And then the NSSL Wharf, again, picking things up. This one here, again, similar on the timing to a lot of these other models. So the NAM, I think, is a slow end. The operational HER, I think, is on the fast end, but right now it's kind of pointing up here to the area near Galesburg, Peoria, sometime tomorrow evening. But again, obviously things can shift here in time with that. And then if we just recenter this here farther to the west, so again, the NSSL Wharf again today, you can see kind of making a mess down there across Texas pretty quickly after storm initiation. So again, not looking too great for sustained supercells today. In this one again, it does try to fire something up there in northeast Colorado. So that's good to see if you're thinking about targeting that area tomorrow. NMMB later on today, again, storms and then kind of insta mess down there across North Texas today. And then moving into tomorrow, also initiating in that northeast Colorado target. So again, if you chase this area here, I think it's going to be tough to get up to Illinois. Probably easier to get up to this area of northeastern Colorado. And then finally, the Wharf ARW, looking at this afternoon. Again, storms down there, growing upscale as expected. And then moving into Saturday, also initiating here, this one a bit farther east across Nebraska. So I think despite the NAM not initiating, I do think this would be a viable target for tomorrow afternoon. And then Sunday, obviously, things start to break down a bit, but either probably central Kansas, Nebraska border, or possibly south again into the southern high plains of western Texas. So it looks like we kept this relatively short today. So we're going to go ahead and stop this, and we will see everybody. Not sure when, but we will see everybody a little bit later on. Bye.